This program is brought to you in association with First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?
Office culture is the very fabric that will bind your organization together, affecting every aspect of the company, from the public's perception of the brand to employees' job satisfaction to the bottom line. Some aspects of this culture will include cocktail Fridays at the office, staff retreats, or even social clubs where a lot of grievances and positive reinforcements take place. But since the outbreak of the coronavirus, the conventional office life and setup is no more, killing most, if not all, human elements of physical interaction. According to an article by ERC Consulting, this form of interaction runs the risk of free flow, which can develop into a form of free culture that is not guided by any traditions, values, beliefs, or any positive attitudes that the company aspires to, and can leave many at the company feeling like they do not belong. This, according to the same article, is the biggest mistake that organizations can make, letting their workplace culture form naturally without first defining what and how they want it to be. But how can an inclusive, positive culture that speaks to the intrinsic values of the organization while also giving employees a sense of belonging be encouraged? Our guest advisor to CEOs of the Financial Times Stock Exchange Top 100 companies in the UK and heads of states, leadership and business keynote speaker, author and television presenter Renee Carriel says the starting point to have an inclusive office culture for all employees is through inclusive communications.
Inclusive communications do not make an inclusive culture. Inclusive leadership makes an inclusive culture. Inclusive communications is a small part of the inclusive leadership. It's not just what you say, it's what you do. What you do is so much more powerful than what anyone can say anything.
Yeah.
That doesn't make the difference. It's what you actually do that makes the difference. So maybe that's where we should start. Today's business environment demands that every voice is heard, every person is valued, their contributions are embraced, and it takes many to make businesses work today. There was a time not so long ago when one person at the top of the organization would call all the shots. They'll solve all the problems. They'd set all the strategy. They would ensure that everything was done that needed to be done. Those days are long gone. It's no longer feasible or possible for one person to make all the decisions, call all the shots anymore. Businesses are too complex, the marketplace is too unforgiving, but most of all, it's all too fast moving. So today what we need is everyone in the business has to make a contribution. The ideas can come from anyone. They used to only come from the top. They can now come from anyone. And increasingly, they come from your colleagues who are closest to the customer. Those out in the field. Those who work with the customer, that's where the best new ideas come from. But sometimes it's really hard to travel from the field. Is it the restaurant? Is it the gym? Is it the factory? It's really hard for that to get up to the chief executive's office or into the C-suite. Therefore, we need an inclusive culture where everyone's contribution is heard. It also means every one of us can turn up at work authentically. We don't have to be who the company wants us to be. We're going to be who we want to be. An inclusive culture states that no matter who you are, you don't have to march in line. You don't have to force yourself to fit in. The company needs you for who you are, because that diversity is what sparks creativity, innovation, and fuels the business to be even better. The old world used to be we're all homogenous. We all went to the same schools. We came from the same town. We all behave the same, look the same, act the same. Those days are long gone. Diversity has been proven. McKinsey and Company did some big research in March 2020 where they demonstrated and proved that diverse teams versus homogenous teams bring a 34% uplift to the financial performance of the business. So why wouldn't you? The issue we have is diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice. Inclusion is the tough bit. Getting a bunch of people together who look differently, that's the easy bit. Creating an environment where they can thrive and flourish is the difficult bit. Obviously, inclusive communications plays a part. Make them feel welcomed. Make them feel part of something special. But what's even more important is the behavior of the leadership. Include them, involve them, enable them to feel that they belong. So the role of the leadership is to create an environment where everyone, no matter what your background, no matter what your skill set, no matter what your age, no matter what your race, no matter what your gender, no matter what your faith, you're welcomed, you feel part of something special, your voice is heard, and you are treasured. And if you don't turn up one day, people miss you.
It is already known that we'll get to the other side of this pandemic. It's just a matter of when. So when we do get to that other side, what do you think should be our point of focus?
The pandemic showed us that people were excluded. It showed us that not everyone was involved. Put the multiplier effect on that after George Floyd. It showed that there were systemic racism. There were systemic reasons within businesses which kept people out and never gave them a voice and never gave them a chance. Here in London, in the UK, what we noticed, what the data told us, is that we saw too many black people in the lower status, high risk, lower paid jobs. We didn't see enough of them in the high status, highly rewarded jobs. Hardly any. As I sit here today talking to you, in our FTSE 100, there are no black chief executives. None. There are no black chairmen. None. This can't be right. It's statistically impossible to prove to me that all the chairmen and chief executives, the best person for that job is a white, middle-aged, middle-class man. It's statistically impossible. That's the driver for inclusion. So after the pandemic, that driver will still remain. And I think the much bigger gap that we see, race is a gap, yes, there's a bigger gap, generations. And I think the gap in generations is the one for the future. We have a generation today, Generation Z today. It's smarter, it's better educated, it's more traveled, it's more outspoken, it's wealthier, it's going to live longer, it'll live to 100, it will not have to deal with smallpox, not have to deal with polio, they speak more languages, they're more demanding, they're more assertive. They're the ones driving climate change, sustainability, and inclusion. And they won't be denied because they're the future customers of every business. We sort of understand why Nike and Netflix might be interested, but it's every single business I'm working with is being moved by a more assertive, a more outspoken younger generation.
Still on the keynote presentation on Popula's virtual bootcamp, you were quoted as saying, traditionally, everyone was asked to challenge down and support up. Today, we are going to turn it on its head. We're going to challenge up, support down. What does this mean for leaders and managers of today?
This is so important for Africa. Africa, it's about management, not always leadership. We're far too often telling people what they need to do. The house style tends to be delegation. Here's 2 or 3 things I need you to do. Go do them. When you finish them, come back to me. I'll check them. Then I'll give you 2 or 3 more things to do. It's long-winded, it lacks trust, and it makes people feel that they need to be told. That is challenge down and they support up. The future will be empowerment. Here's where we want to take the business. I'm empowering you to go and make some decisions to get us there. I trust you. And if I trust you, you're going to work harder. You're going to go the extra mile. You're going to take more care about the decisions because I've given you ownership. It's faster. And that is, you're going to challenge up and I support you down. As the chief executive, as a leader, I'm creating an environment where you can flourish. I'm enabling you to be successful. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm trusting. I'm empowering. That's the future. And that's what the younger generation is screaming for. Trust me, I won't let you down.
As the saying goes, to whom much is given, much is expected. So the question is, does our guest believe that today's generation is capable of successfully carrying out that much responsibility on their shoulders?
The more responsibility you give to people, the more they rise to the challenge. The less responsibility, the less I trust you, the less you rise to the challenge. We've got to take away that old thinking. Age isn't the issue. It's my trust in you. And we always know that. So one of the proof points, 90% of what's spoken about in the management meeting is not private or confidential. Come out of the management meeting and share everything with your people. No, we don't. We'll share 10%. If I keep 90%, makes me important and gives me control, gives me power. If I share 100%, the more they feel trusted, the more they'll fight for me, the more they'll march for me, the more they'll try to win for me. If I come out and share as much as I can, they feel trusted. They'll take even more responsibility. They'll care even more. They'll start a bit earlier. They'll work a bit later because you've trusted them. If I trust you nothing at all, you'll do just about enough not to be fired.
Renee, I want us to close our conversation with yet another quote from your keynote presentation, and it goes as such. Until the lions have their own storytellers, the tales of the hunt will always favor the hunter. How does this speak to an inclusive workplace culture for all employees?
The quote is, until the lions have their own storytellers, the tales of the hunt will always favor the hunter. Managers talk strategy, leaders tell stories. 3 men working on a building site in the burning sun. They're breaking rocks. It's the toughest work you've ever seen. They're dripping in sweat. The journalist comes to the first one and says, "Why do you do this job?" "I haven't worked for 3 years. I took the first job I could get." Goes to the second one, "Why do you do this job?" "I've got a wife and 3 kids to feed. I took the first job I could get." Goes to the third one, "Why do you do this job?" He looks up, he wipes the sweat from his brow, and he leans on his shovel and he says proudly, "I'm helping to build a cathedral. I'm helping to build a cathedral." And it might be a mosque, it might be a temple, it might be a synagogue, depending on where you are. But what he's really saying is, I'm part of something special.
Yes.
I have someone to believe in and something to belong to. Nobody should do a manual or menial or repetitive job. The role of the leader is to make everyone feel they're building a cathedral. And it's not once a month at the all-hands meeting. It's every single day. You make everyone who works for you feel as though they're part of something special. Welcome to inclusive leadership.